Dictionaries define blindness as being without the sense of sight, but there are many degrees of blindness. Some blind people can tell light from dark, others also have a small amount of vision. Most blind people, however, cannot even see light. We do not yet know all the causes of blindness. When a child is blind from birth, his or her blindness is called congenital. Blindness that occurs after birth usually comes from a disease of the eye or from an accident. The two leading causes of blindness in the United States are cataracts and glaucoma. A cataract is a clouding or dulling of the lens of the eye. The lens is the part of the eye which light passes through. When the lens is cloudy, a person cannot see. Fortunately, an eye surgeon can remove most cataracts with a machine called a laser. Glaucoma causes the eyeball to harden and puts great pressure on the eye from the inside. If glaucoma is discovered in time, people can take medicine to control it. One of the most famous blind people in the world was Louis Braille. Braille was born in 1809 in a small town in France, where his father had a small leather-making shop. One day, when he was 3 years old, the boy was playing in his father's shop. He picked up a tool with a sharp point and fell on it, blinding himself in both eyes. Even though he was only a small child, he had to learn to walk with a cane in order to feel where he was going. Naturally, the people of the town felt very sorry for this little boy when they saw him, completely blind, feeling his way along the streets with his cane. A few years later, Braille went to a special school for the blind in Paris. There he learned to read, that is, he learned to recognize the 26 letters of the alphabet by feeling them with his fingers. But the letters were several inches high and several inches wide, and this was a very primitive system of reading. A very short article filled several books, and each book weighed 8 or 9 pounds. Later, Braille became a teacher in this same school. By this time in his life, he was also a musician. His mind was active, and he was always seeking to invent a way for blind people to become less dependent on people with sight. Braille wanted to find a better system of reading for the blind, but it wasn't easy. One day, on a visit home, he said to his father, "Blind people are the loneliest people in the world. I can tell one bird from another by its sound. I can know the door of the house by feeling it with my hand. But there are so many things which I cannot hear and cannot feel. Only books can free the blind." One day, Braille was sitting in a restaurant with a friend. The friend was reading the newspaper to him. He read an article about a French army captain who had a system of writing which he could use in the dark. The captain called it night writing. In this night writing, he used a system of dots and dashes. The dots and dashes were raised on the paper so that a person could feel them with his or her fingers. When Braille heard this, he realized at once that it was the answer to the problem of the blind. This was the breakthrough he had hoped and waited for. It was a turning point in his life, and it would be a turning point in the lives of many people. The next day, Braille went with a friend to visit the army captain. He asked the captain about his writing system. The captain explained that he used a tool with a sharp point to make dots and small dashes in thick paper. A person could feel these dots and dashes on the other side of the paper. Certain marks meant one thing, while other marks meant another. The tool he used was the same kind of tool which Braille had blinded himself with. Braille was certain that he could develop the system to help blind people read. His goal was to give them better books. He worked day and night studying this new idea and trying to find a way to use it for the blind. After experimenting with many different ways of making dots and dashes on paper, Braille finally arrived at a simple system. He used 6 holes within a small space. With these 6 holes in different positions, he could make 63 different combinations. Each combination indicated a letter of the alphabet or a short word. There were even combinations to indicate punctuation marks. Soon he wrote a book using the Braille system. At first people didn't believe that this system was possible or practical. One time, Braille spoke before a group of people. He showed how he could write by making these holes in paper almost as fast as someone could read to him. Then he read back easily what he had written. But the people didn't believe him. They said that it was impossible to do this, that Braille had learned by memory what he had read to them. The same thing happened everywhere. For one reason or another, people didn't want to believe Braille. Even the French government didn't want to hear anything about his system. They said that they were already doing everything possible for the blind. Braille was now devoting all his time to his new system, but no one was listening. He became discouraged, and his health began to fail. He continued to work on the system, but by the 1850s he was a very sick man, and each year he became sicker. Somehow, even with all this disappointment, he continued to work on his system, to make it better. Braille worked out a system of marks for mathematics and music. One day, a girl who was congenitally blind played the piano beautifully before a large audience. Everyone in the audience was very pleased. Then the girl got up and said that the people should not thank her for playing so well. They should thank Louis Braille. It was Braille, she said, who had made it possible for her to learn music and to play the piano. She also told them that he was a very sick man and that he was dying. Suddenly, after so many years, everyone became interested in Louis Braille. The newspapers wrote articles about him. The government also became interested in his system of reading for the blind. Some of Braille's friends went to his home to see him. He was sick in bed. They told him what had happened. Braille began to cry. He said, "This is the 3rd time in my life that I have cried. First, when I became blind. Second, when I heard about night writing, and now because I know that my life has not been a failure." A few days later Braille died. He was only 43 years old. Braille's dream of giving books to the blind did not die with him. Most of the world's great books are now available in Braille editions so that people who cannot see can at least read. Blind people may still be lonely, but they aren't as lonely as they were before Louis Braille.